Hi everyone, it's Action Johnny here, and I'm here today to talk about crab and the deck building choices available to crab now that the summer restricted list has been released by Tyler. This one was pretty brutal for crab if you have been following. We pretty much got gutted as a faction. They, in my opinion, kind of tore out the backbone. When I say they, I mean Tyler. Tyler kind of tore out the backbone of what crab does. Which is basically abuse labs and generate value through holdings. But the biggest surprise to me, I think, I was kind of expecting labs to get hit. I think everyone was kind of expecting labs to get hit, and that's fine. Labs is kind of a stupid card. But I was the biggest surprise to me, I think, was the keeper initiates. That was huge. Crab have had a very historic relationship with keeper initiates ever since the game came out. They're free characters, and when you're running cards like labs and cards that require sacrifice to trigger, keeper initiates are very, very good because they do fun things like respawn endlessly from your discard when you acquire the correct ring. So that I think was the biggest surprise for me, was essentially the removal of the keeper initiate from the game, because I can't see many factions, with perhaps the exception of Unicorn, who basically don't need to run any of the other cards on the restricted list. I can't see anyone really choosing keepers as a restricted card. They're very, very good, but they are a synergy card. In Crab they synergize with Cooney Labs, or did synergize with Cooney Labs, I should say. And in Unicorn they synergize with Hisu Mori Toride. Anyone that I'm kind of a bit of a purist in this sense. Anyone who isn't running keepers in HMT is really missing the boat. Free characters, free conflicts, they're great. But I'm not here today to talk about Hisumori Toride and Unicorn. I'm here today to talk about Crab. So let's get on with the show. So I got a little agenda here, organised. What did Crab lose? First of all, let's have a look at that. Crab lost essentially their two best holdings. Both have been restricted now. These holdings are the Cooney Labs, which I'm sure need no introduction. I've got them up on the screen right now in case you need reminding of that. They also lost Iron Mine, which has been a absolute staple of crab decks since the beginning of the game. This is when I started playing. And it feels weird, Crab have always been the save clan. So Cooney Labs, Iron Mine, Keeper Initiate, and Rebuild are now all on the restricted list. So Tyler has really broken up Crab's package, essentially. I feel like this is maybe a slight overcorrection here. Keeper Initiates were very surprising to me. I feel like the reason they got restricted is because they're just absolutely ubiquitous in Keeper decks, but then they are also the reason you would play Keeper. So removing Keeper Initiates just seems a bit I don't really understand the thought process behind that. I could describe that in some slightly more unflattering language, but let's just say I don't understand the thought process behind that at all. there are many ubiquitous, powerful, neutral cards from the core set. Katana's fans, Band's Eye core games to name but a few. I don't know why he's gone after Keeper Initiate specifically and targeted them. Like, they are a powerful card, a powerful neutral card, but they come from a set in the game that has many powerful neutral cards. And in restricting Keepers, you basically kind of killed, at this point in time at least, the Keeper role. And we'll touch on that a bit more later. So when I say the backbone of Crab has been torn out, I mean the sort of structure on which Crab built their decks around is now gone. So we have to go back to the drawing board a bit. You know, previously the plan was run busted holdings, run rebuild, run lots of low cost, efficient, value generating characters, and then basically kind of outvalue your opponent. Crab are good at that, you know. Hard to play well because a lot of the time you are working with less base stats than everyone else, and traditionally as well, Crab decks are expensive. I mean, even in this deck, you know, it's still costs money. Everything costs money. Your best stuff, all your best events and attachments cost money. I've tried to put as much free stuff in here as well, but like traditionally Crab conflict decks are quite expensive. Crab dynasty decks, expensive because either you're trying to play into labs and go wide, which means you're buying multiple dudes, you're triggering Kindred Heater, you know, you're likely not getting the passing fate. Crab are on Keeper a lot of the time as well, prior to the nerf, prior to Keepers getting banned, so that means they're not getting Fate from Seeker Fate. You know, so Crab are reliant on things like Envoy and Quartermaster, or were reliant on these cards, these cheap, shitty cards that generate more value, but synergize really nicely with all the other stuff. And now all that is basically just gone, right? So what can we do? Now that we've lost that, what is Crab's strength? And I would say they've definitely dropped a few tiers, but theoretically it would appear to me that Crab's strength is still, it's kind of versatility to an extent, and also still value. We still have the ways to generate lots of value, which is good. So when I say versatility, what do I mean? I mean, you know, are we the tower faction? I don't think we are. Don't think Crab is the tower faction. But we can tower. We can tower up one big character, or we can spread our attachments across multiple guys. Are we the wide faction? No, I don't think we are. I think Unicorn is the wide faction, undisputably now. But we can, if we choose to, can go wide, right? I feel like finding a Crab deck that's good, subjectively good, and that you enjoy is going to come down to really figuring out what kind of play style you like and then going from there. Because there are options now. So let's talk about some of those options. What are we doing now? What are we picking? What are we running in terms of, you know, filling the space that was lost from our decks? So I'm going to just talk about a couple of ideas today. I've just been playing some stuff because I'm playing Crab in the World Cup right now. And assuming Canada gets past this next round, we're going to be doing a resubmit. So, you know, deck building is something I need to be thinking about. The biggest choice now opened up is the role. I don't think Keeper is worth it anymore. I just think you lose so much and gain so little. So I think Crab really needs to be looking at Seeker, which is something we've historically never done because going Seeker was so bad. You know, for the first year of the game, all we splashed was Unicorn, never went Seeker because Keeper initiates Talisman of the Sun. Second year of the game, Neverwinter Seeker, Keeper Initiates, Talisman of the Sun, Defend Your Honor. And even if you didn't play Unicorn Splash, because eventually Unicorn Splash lost Spyglass and got nerfed and yada yada yada, you still had Defend Your Honor and Keeper Initiates, and sometimes Crisis Breaker as well. Basically, Crab were really, really pushed into Keeper. And now, all you really have from Keeper is Defend Your Honor, which is nice. It's a good card, but it is not the end all be all. You know, you can still build your deck in a way where cancels aren't necessary. But, you know, I'm never going to be like, cancels are bad. They're always good, but you just, you know, learning to play about cancels is something that you should probably practice at. So role choices, Seeker. Seeker seems very apparent to be the correct choice for me now. Why? Well, for a start, it actually allows you to make a fairly formidable looking row, which again, historically is not something Crab has ever had. There's actually always been quite a funny thing to me, because Crab has always been the defensive faction, right? We like defending and then swinging back and grinding out resources on defense and then, you know, doing efficient attacks back and, you know, yeah, that's the whole vibe. But they've always had one of the softest rows to defend, so having a soft row isn't great for that. But now we can have a good row. And the row that I've been experimenting with is this one you see right here. This is actually currently in all my decks. The weakest province on my row is Fertile Fields, and honestly, I don't even hate that, because I love drawing cards. If I can draw a card, if I can defend this, if I can get 2 cards out of Fertile Fields, happy fucking days. I'm happy with it. Courteous Greeting is something I'm testing right now. I feel like on break effects are maybe the weakest they've ever been right now. You have, in the meta, just off the top of my head, Ambusher. You have Highlight the Flaws, which is a Crane Fire Roll card I've seen sneaking in to some decks. You have Pathfinder's Blade, which is basically now the Dragon restricted card, since Policy Debate has now been banned. The Crane Splash decks will lapse in popularity, and they'll go back to Crab Splash decks and Nisen Master. And honestly, in those decks, Pathfinder Blade is just a no-brainer. Crab are going to start running more Pathfinder Blade as well. If everyone goes over to Seeker, then it's just kind of there. And yeah, it's a fucking really powerful card still, you know? Just because it's not Rebuild and Kunima Labs of Mines, it's still pretty good. And then what was the other one? Return from Shadows is kind of, you know, out and about as well. So there's Province Hate, and there's more Province Hate to come. I mean, off the top of my head, we know that Sanuri from the Lion Clan is coming out in Pack 4. She blanks provinces. So, yeah, kind of doesn't really matter if it's on break or action. But at least you want to defend an action province. Defending an on break province, even if it's blank, still feels real bad. Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be more province hate coming out. It's something we've seen more of in the design of the game. So, don't like on break stuff. I like all my row to be defendable in Crab, you know? At least that way, I have to, if they fuck up, if they don't break the province, they have to come back for it. They have to spend another province cancelling card. You know, it fits the theme. Yeah, Shameful Display and Pilgrimage, because Void provinces are still the best after all this time. No reason to not be being Secret Void. And being Void Roll also gives us access to some cool cards. So this card's made its way into a lot of my decks. I'm going to show you a couple of decks today as well, just to show you the different kind of ideas I've been having. Obsidian Talisman. I actually saw my teammate Pugin, aka Zach, play this in one of his dragon decks. And it's one of those cards that you look at it and you're like, well, this is hugely underwhelming. And then you actually play with it and you're like, oh, actually, this has a lot of application. So yeah, as we're all Seeker now, since it's better, I think anyway, and we might as well be Seeker Avoid since it is the best row. You might as well stick this in your deck. It's 0 cost, it gives a stat, and it removes status tokens. So it is good versus anything that heavily dishonors. Like if okay, so a good use of this is protecting yourself from, you know, you do have to pre-play in this situation, but protecting yourself from things like Noble Sack, where you can always tell it in a Crane deck if they're kind of like angling to get a Noble Sack off, they'll start, you know, they'll go firing. It was pretty telegraphed, right? So you can pre-play Obsidian Talisman to stop that from happening, especially on your good guys. It has some very nice synergy with Shinzei's Last Hope, which is a new crab province that came out this cycle. And in general, I've been using it to replace court games. Because I think court games is pretty bad in crab. It feels really underwhelming. A lot of the time, I play court games on their guys to like dishonor them. And then they will generally court games right back and re-honor their guy, you know? And sometimes my guys will get court games and then I'll court games my guys back. So I like this better than court games because although it essentially removes the aggressive aspect of court games, like I can't dishonor people's characters anymore. Instead, I get a stat in my best conflict. And if people want to dishonor me, then I can just instantly counter that, you know? So yes, it's like, the way I view this card is like 1/2 of court games. That's also an attachment that stays in play longer and generates value, right? So it's handy. It has been very handy. It's especially good with characters with more than one glory as well. So if you're running Tadaka or Shihobu, which I am at the minute, you know, these characters are very good. They are kind of let down by the glory stat a bit. It's handy. It's very handy. What else? Seeker roll stuff. This guy, Blatant Swindler. He is... he's also new this cycle. Seeker roll only. Action, give your opponent an honor, and they can send home a guy of their choosing. So I hear some of you say, oh, well, this card's really bad. You know, they get to choose. You know, you have to give them an honor. I would say anyone that thinks that card is bad needs to play some Unicorn and just see like how effective send homes can be. Like this guy, to me, reminds me a lot of the Unicorn card, where the open hand, where you can use it defensively or offensively to crack their row or protect your provinces for very, very little investment, you know? And anyone sort of stipulating on the choose a participating character, I'm just like, yo, look at Vice Proprietor. Is Vice Proprietor considered bad? No, Vice Proprietor is real good. His text, by the way, reads, your opponent chooses a guy to bow, and you bow them at the cost of dishonoring himself. So, yeah, Blatant Swindler is really good for a 1-drop. And once you've sent someone home, or defended your, sent someone home from an aggressive conflict or defending your provinces, you can sacrifice him and get some value out of him that way. Probably seeing a lack of Guardian in these decks, and that's because I think Guardian is bad without City of the Rich Frog, and I think City of the Rich Frog is bad in Seeker. I actually think eminent provinces in general are bad in Seeker, but we'll get to that a bit later. So yeah, no Guardian for the time being. I can only at max flop 4 holdings, and that is assuming that I play Guardian in the turn before. So Guardian's out for now. We might revisit him later on when some of these rally holdings show up, if the rumours are to be believed. Yeah, so new stuff we can run. I guess we're kind of on the new stuff theme already. Roadside Inn is not a card I'd even bothered to read until this restricted list. And I've played about 5 games of this now, and I have to say, I really like it. I really, really like it. If you gave me labs and mines back today, like Tyler was just like, oh, they're not restricted, I changed my mind, I'd actually still be putting at least 1 copy of this in my deck. It creates some really interesting scenarios. So the most basic thing is, if I have a roadside inn on my row and I'm confident I can defend it, which, as Crab, you generally can, unless you fucked up, I can underfate a guy that I intend to put more fate on. Like, I can have more fate going into the conflict phase, because roadside inn allows me to essentially put a fate on at a later date. Assuming that you don't need and it also kind of acts as an iron mine as well, but it's not going to save you from removal, but it will save you from your characters expiring in the fate phase. I hear some of you go, oh, wait a minute, Dan, hold tight, the opponent gets to do it as well. Well, yes, they do. They do get to do it if they want to. But a lot of the time, versus Crab, opponents don't like giving you honor, and if they do give you the honor, then you can leverage that, because guess what? Crab run lots of stuff that burns their honor. Since Scorpion is now maybe at the bottom of the pack for the first time ever in Legend of the Five Rings, I think 2 copies of Assassination is a really good shout in your conflict decks right now with Crab. Like, it's so strong. 2 Assassination, 3-way of the Crab. We're going right back to core set Crab days, where this was just like a standard because there just wasn't anything else to run. And it just blows fucking people out. People are putting way less conflict characters in their deck as well, so it's hard to defend. They need like a cancel, they need protection. Cancels are an all-time low. Scorpion have really got some tough choices to make now, so most of them maybe wouldn't even choose Edict. Censure is going to be way less ubiquitous, because the only people that can actually run Censure convincingly now are Phoenix and probably Unicorn, because Unicorn can run Display of Power or Keeper Initiates. It's allowing them to compete with the Censure. So I think you'll see a lot less Censure in the game in general. So and I think as well you're going to see a lot less Defend Your Honor, because Keeper is now just awful. It's so bad. So with the amount of cancels leaving the game, or rather being less present in the game, because it's only now voice really, and we'll get to Voice of Honor in a minute. Assassination is great. Anything that burns your honor in a conflict sense, or actually just in a general sense, tends to be very strong in this game. Obsidian Talisman is a strong effect, right? And speaking of Voice of Honor, fun little thing you can do is put this on their Crane characters and turn off their honor status tokens. So you don't need to worry about your Way of the Crabs and your Assassinates getting voiced there. Cooney Labs burns honor, Banzai's burn honor, Assassinates burn honor. There is a bunch of shit that burns honor, and actually Crab have some stuff that like is rewarded by that. Oh, Blatant Swindler is another card that burns honor. I'm sure you can think of others. So yeah, getting an honor from the roadside inn is pretty good. Like, even if your opponent puts a fate on their guy, I have discovered that a lot of the time they just haven't set up their board to leverage it as well as you. A lot of the time I've found that people using my roadside inn to put a fate on their guy, they're actually often just putting another fate on a guy that already had fate. Or it's very rare it goes on like a 1-cost guy to keep it in the game, because a lot of the time as well people don't like factor the roadside inn fate into their turn plan. They have expensive attachments they want to play, or characters they want to buy. Like they may not end the turn with a fate, so they don't actually trigger it as much as you do. And if they do trigger it, I'm just saying it's not the worst. It really isn't, because you're getting that honor and you can leverage it probably better than they can. So Roadside Inn is really good. I like it. Is it Iron Mine? No, it's not. Nothing will ever be Iron Mine. But we've got to play to our strengths, and our strengths are sticking around. And you can. One cool thing that this can do that Iron Mine can't is it can actually keep a character in play forever. I'm sure we've all had games as Crab where you eventually kind of run out of steam and because all your saves are expended and then your board goes away. Well, this kind of does stop that. Because we've lost Iron Mine and we've lost the ability to essentially protect ourselves from removal with that, I'm back on reprieves now. And I'm not even... I know reprieve is worse than Iron Mine in every way. It costs a fate. It can be removed with removal. I'm not actually super worried about people zapping my reprieves now, because there are a lot of other dangerous attachments that they need to take care of as well. So this is actually one of my lighter attachment decks. But if we go over to the Tadaka Blitz one, this one is rocking 20 attachments. And if we go over to... this actually isn't my deck. This is Mosey's deck. I've just taken the idea and tuned it to my preferences. We've got even more here, right? So with 18 to 21 attachments in all Crab decks, people zapping reprieves isn't really a bother to me. Okay, and the last thing I will say about new choices is this isn't really a new choice, but I will say one guy that has been around for a while now that probably hasn't seen much play, Yakimo. Because Yakimo is fucking amazing when his passive text is always on. And this guy essentially does not have a downside to playing when you can consistently be less honourable than your opponent. Okay, so I hear some of you saying, oh, Dan, being less honourable than an opponent with Crab is real bad because that makes Watch Commander shit, yeah? Like, how are our opponents ever gonna feel threatened when they've always got more honour than us? Because... yeah, then they can just, ignore Watch Commander or play around Watch Commander or whatever. Blah, blah. Watch Commander to me has never actually been about trying to win via dishonor. I just don't think that's going to happen, really, versus a player worth their soul. Like, I've played games where I've played like 2 turns at 1 honor, right? And unless you can take that last honor, no one is going to play into Watch Commander to die, really. Watch Commander's greatest strength is kind of nodding to your opponent and saying, you can play the game, but it's going to cost you. And its greatest mechanic for me its greatest application for me is allowing you to play cards from your hand while punishing your opponent doing so. And actually, when the game progresses to a certain point, and maybe the hand sizes are uneven, there's a big discrepancy there. That's when Watch Commander really shines. I've had games where they have maybe 9 more cards than me. Let's say I have 10 cards and they have 19 for some crazy reason. Watch Commander makes that situation fine. Like, I want him to have 19 cards. I want him to play them. It's a punish card. It's there to even the odds for you when your hand size is low. And yeah, you can still do things like switch your bids, but I honestly think bidding 1 as Crab now is kind of like death. If you're doing it to be strategic, to try and force that honor out, the only times you should really be bidding 1 is if bidding higher will kill you, or you're so far ahead on cards that you literally don't need to bid anymore. I think bidding 1 in all other situations is generally pretty bad. Because you can't proactively dishonor with Crab. You can't play backhanded compliments and wear the scorpions and all this other shit you are reliant on people playing into your Watch Commander. So I just think if your whole plan is to like dishonor them out, that's bad. So yeah, summary, I think it's great staying at lower honor now. I think you really often want to be at lower honor because it turns on your Yakumo. You are naturally going to be in that state anyway because of your low starting honor and your various honor taxing effects. So Watch Commander is still 100% amazing. You still run 3 of it. You just use it to close the gap of card discrepancy between you and an opponent now. Well, I mean, I think that's always how it was intended to be played. This is nothing new, to be honest. So far, what have we got? We've lost a lot of powerful stuff, but it's all about getting into these spots where we use powerful effects that leverage honor and surviving at lower honor and punishing our opponent for playing their cards. Yada yada. So our main victory condition as Crab is still very much conquest. We're not going to do that as well as Phoenix, who basically didn't get hit by the restricted list. And Phoenix has always traditionally been a hard matchup. But Crab still has really strong cards. We lost some of our most value-generating cards, but we still have a lot of strong stuff. So now to the meat and gristle, I guess, of this video, which is, well, what do I do now? My labs are gone, my mines are gone, my keepers are gone, my rebuild is gone. Like, what the fuck does a Crab deck even look like? And I'd say you've got some choices now, depending on your playstyle, depending on what kind of deck you want to run. You can go a few routes, and I've got 3 different decks to like explore here. I'm not going to go into the inner workings of all of them because that would take all day, but I am going to go into like how each one plays Crab slightly differently. So you have some choices here. I guess the first one we'll look at, which is probably, I don't know if it's the most aggressive, but it's an aggressive deck, and this is Mosey's deck with a few changes. Your first option is just leveraging value to fuckery, right? So even though this is an eminent province in Seeker, which I don't like because it's always going to be the one attacked, Shinsei in this deck is actually kind of nuts. The idea is you put stuff on your Shinsei and you just buy as much stuff through Shinsei as possible. So how do you do that? Well, stuff naturally spawns on Shinsei. You can move stuff over with logistics. And people are like, what? Logistics sucks without a battlefield? Well, let me tell you, this right here is a battlefield. Favorable ground, also a battlefield. This one right here, a battlefield. There's enough battlefields so you can consistently get the card draw from it. Let's not forget that Favorable Ground is fairly ubiquitous as well, so you're gonna, if they have battlefields, you can use those as well. So logistics moves stuff to Shinsei's Last Hope. Borderlands Fortifications can move stuff to Last Hope, and let's also not forget that this boy right here, who is, by the way, a card that people should be looking at again now. I see a lot of people moving away from Kinden Hida over to Shiro Nishiyama, which I'll talk about in just a second. You can have a holding on your Shinsei's Last Hope with this dude, and just you can start building characters onto it. So there's a lot of way to basically move stuff to Shinsei or spawn stuff on Shinsei and then buy it. And every time you buy something from Shinsei, you are basically gaining 2 fate of your opponent. Oh, but it comes in Dishonored, I hear you say. Well, remember this card that I was waxing lyrical about earlier? That takes care of that. Do we care if our Crab characters are honored? No, we don't. If you really want to honor someone because they have 2 glory, like Shuichi or Shihobu or Tadaka or whatever, you can go firing. But realistically, that's not how Crab wins games. Most of the time I'm just using firing to dishonor my opponent's 3 glory guy. But yeah, the whole point of this deck is it's aggressive. It generates value through Shinsei and all the other million crab cards that generate value. And it wins by building a big board quite quickly. Oh yeah, there was one thing I didn't touch on about the whole leveraging our lower honor now. In the past, before this restricted list, this would have been really dangerous because Scorpion has always been the natural predator of crab. But Scorpion are dead now, son. Scorpion are fucking dead. Scorpion may be the worst deck in the entire game now. I don't know like how they're going to rise from the ashes. I'm sure they will because it's the cockroach faction, they always do. But right now, they are not on my fucking radar. I am not worried about Scorpion. I'm really not worried about getting Dishonored out. And maybe I'll eat my hat at that, but yeah, currently not that fussed. So we can, for the first time ever, play low to the ground for honor and really get all the advantages of caning through that. Okay, so yeah, generating value, Shinsei, one way of playing crab. Oh, I guess we'll talk a little bit about the stronghold selection as well. And I think the stronghold selection does come down to your restricted list choice. If you're running like an aggressive deck where you just kind of want to break their provinces and defend your provinces, like you kind of like, it's not a province trading deck because ideally you leverage your value to stop them from killing you, right? I can break your province with Pathfinder Blade and Hideyakumo, and then I can fend my province with Hideyakumo because he's still ready, right? So if you're playing an aggressive game where you break and defend, Pathfinder's Blade real good, real good. It's one of those things that's always kind of been seen as a dragon card. But yeah, I will say one thing: Dragon is now arguably one of the worst matchups for us, and in that matchup, fucking hell, this thing goes a long way. And if you combine that with 1 or 2 copies of Return from Shadows as well, it's really hard. It's really hard to consistently like you put a lot of defensive pressure on Dragon, because they have to always have a guy in the conflict because they don't want their Sacred Sanctuary getting returned from Shadows. So yeah, Pathfinder's Blade, pretty damn good right now. And if you're running Pathfinder's Blade, I would stick with Shiro Nishiyama. The problem with Kinden Hida now is that it mills cards you may want to play. And that may be okay in certain decks. Decks where you really need to see a certain character quickly. If your entire deck is reliant on seeing a certain character, I would still run Kinden Hida. But if it isn't, then a lot of the time you are just going to be essentially Kinden Hida is acting as like a dynasty filter. Like you just go through your deck faster. But because we can't interact with our discard pile anymore at all, I feel like its value has dropped off a lot. You're basically trading extra dynasty draw. So you're basically trading superior province strength and stats for 3 extra dynasty draw a turn. So most decks now I feel will be better with Shiro and Nishiyama. But let's have a look at a deck which Kinden Hida might be a bit better on. We'll go over to this one here. Okay, so next question, or next sort of thought, not question, I'm not here to answer questions really, I'm here to talk about thoughts. The next thought you might have is like, well, what restricted list card do I choose? I don't want to run Pathfinder's Blade, even though I'm seeker of whatever. I don't, I kind of want to play a more defensive, grindy game of crab. What should I do? Well, you can still run one of our busted holdings, either the Kuni Lab or the Mines. Actually, I think the Iron Mine is probably the correct choice for restricted card if you don't know what you want your deck to do. If you it's still really good, even though you can't rebuild it anymore. Iron Mine is still really, really, really good. I would never run, if you're not running Shihobu, this lady right here, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, then I wouldn't run Kynden Hida either. Because if your restricted card is the holding that you absolutely need to flip on a province, then chucking that away to Kynden Hida feels pretty bad. But Kaio Shihobu facilitates some really... If you want to run Kynden Hida, then I think you need to run Kaio Shihobu as well. Because she is now, other than that terrible Earth Roll locked card I can't remember the name of, she is now the only way to interactive holdings in your deck. So let's say you're like, okay, well, I want to run Labs. I want to run Kuni Labs because Labs is still an insane card. You know, how do I play Labs reliably out of Crab? And the answer is quite simply Kaio Shihobu. The cool thing about being Seeker as well, which I didn't touch on initially, is for the first time ever, you get to enjoy Seeker Fate. And fucking hell, as someone that's literally just played Keeper Clans their entire L5R life, like, having this Seeker Fate is amazing to me. Just one extra Fate a turn, the difference it makes is nutty sometimes. It really is just like that little bump you need in Cram's very expensive like conflict deck. So yeah, you run Shihobu, and that means you unfortunately have to run a bunch of stuff to protect Shihobu, because she is a big, expensive 5 cost with 2 glory that is prone to getting clouded or killed or dishonored. So, you know, if we're running Shihobu, then that means I want to run Dragon Splash for Let Go, and that means I'm probably taking the second best dragon card, which is Tattooed Wanderer. I'm definitely running a Obsidian Talisman because she's got 2 glory. I don't want her being dishonored. If I'm running Covert, I might as well like add a bit of extra Covert here. Like, conflict characters in Crab are always really good because we're the Crab. You know, having a load of really good functional 1-drops is great. Also, all these conflict guys are sweet with Labs. Nezumi Infiltrator especially is just the absolute Mars nuts of Labs. So yeah, if you want to run a holding as your if you want to run if you want to run a holding and Kynden Hida, you're a restricted holding in Kynden Hida, then you definitely want this girl. She's great. Being able to just filter out the 4 or 5 most impactful holdings and just select and play them into a province is insanely strong. She actually facilitates the running of a lot of other holdings that you wouldn't normally see play as well. Like 7th Tower and River of the Last Stand can both be huge Shihobu action triggers. Like River of the Last Stand versus clans like fucking Phoenix and Scorpion, so good. 7th Tower, you know, I don't need to, I mean, you all know Defend the Wall is a thing. This is just Defend the Wall and holding. You know, all these like little one-off holdings that she can kind of collect. She's really good now because she is now the only way to interact with your holdings in a meaningful way, right? So yeah, that's another option. Kynden Hida, Shihobu, busted holding. If you want to run Iron Mines, but you also want to run Shiro Nishiyama because you think it's better, then you could still run Kaio Shihobu as well. But you also risk not seeing her because you're only flopping 4 cards a turn. So I think she's less good when you're seeing less cards. She really is a build-around character, which means you really want to see her, a bit like Mitsu 2 in that Dragon deck. Yeah. Oh yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention. This thing, Lost Papers. Very good in Crab. And I should have actually talked about Lost Papers when I was talking about Roadside In. You know, your opponent will fate differently to you because you have saves and they don't. So when they choose to activate Roadside In, as I previously said, a lot of the time that fate's just going on a character that has fate. And also you can kind of control who they roadside in to a degree with Way of the Crab and Assassinate. Like if they do have a Fateless 1-drop or a Fateless 2-drop, cool, get rid of it. Way of the Crab it, fine. And then if they choose to use roadside in and put an extra fate on their dude, well guess what? That guy just got the highest fate on the board, which means that if you flip Lost Papers the next turn, wha-bam! They're eating that. So it's got some synergy with this stupid roadside in. Yeah, so I guess actually as well, while we're talking about restricted list cards, we should talk about Rebuild and why I think Rebuild is now an absolute red herring of a choice. I don't think this is worth running anymore because it had the most impact when you are either shuffling a save, and I mean a save not in terms of like keeping your character on the board in the fate phase. I mean a save against Assassinate or Noble Sack or Way of the Crab or I Can Swim, you know, whatever that looks like, anything that removes, or Eugenia, you know, Iron Mind's great, like strength to me, it wasn't necessarily the keeping crab characters around another turn. It was saying to your opponent, yo, if you try and assassinate me or kill me, then this 0 province strength holding is going to stop that. And Rebuild was just a way to like constantly like stop removal from happening. So you know, very good in that sense. And if you didn't need that, then a lot of the times I found you would be rebuilding mines. Very, very, very rarely would you rebuild something else. You know, the other things I can, off the top of my head, that I've rebuilt in recent memory before the restricted list were Funeral Pyre when I absolutely had to get a fucking card or I needed something to sacrifice. I needed an action that caused sacrifice. Or in very rare circumstances, a Wall Piece. And actually a lot of the time I would just rebuild Forge and then use Forge to go look for a lab. So yeah, essentially Rebuild was there for bringing back mines and to save you, stop your guys from getting assassinated, or bring back labs so that you could win conflict. None of these holdings really need to be rebuilt. The only argument really might be for roadside in. But then when you rebuild roadside in, you want it around. You know, you don't want to keep rebuilding it, you just leave it on your row. So I just think Rebuild now, the applications of it as of Cycle 4 Pack 3 are very limited. I just don't really know. Like the entire power of this card, all of its power is tied to whatever it is you're rebuilding. So if what you're rebuilding isn't like, wow, this is just unbelievably game-winningly sick, then what's the fucking point? There isn't one. Okay, so yeah, I reckon don't bother with Rebuild anymore. I think it's a trap. Keeper Initiates, let's talk about those for a second. You're like, well, Dan, you know, actually I don't like what you've been saying here with moving to Seeker and trying to leverage that. You know, I really like Defend Your Honor. I like City of the Rich Frog and Holdings. I like my Heated Guardians. You know, this, that, and the other. Is there an argument for Keeper Initiates as your restricted choice? I don't think so. I don't think on their own, because now you have to look at Keeper Initiates like essentially in a vacuum. You know, you can't wear the crab Keeper Initiates. So that means that most of the time, Keeper Initiates are going to be used for Common Cause, Witch Hunter, and Student of Anatomies. And maybe the odd Funeral Pyre here and there, but that's really a deal breaker. Not really a deal breaker. Are they worth running at the expense of another really strong card for that? I don't think so. I think even if you ran Keeper Initiates as your restricted card in a Keeper deck, your deck would still lose so much from being a Keeper deck that it just wouldn't be very good. I think keepers are insanely powerful, but there is a reason for that power. In Crab, the sacrifice synergy was one part, but the other synergy was the labs. And I just don't think they do enough without labs to pick them over the other powerful options that you have. I don't think, I feel like if you wanted to play Crab with Defend Your Honor and Keepers, you could. I just feel like that's quite a low tier Crab deck now. So I'm not convinced that Keeper Initiates are any good as a restricted choice. Maybe there'll be some busted Keeper only cards coming out in this cycle that might change that. Who knows? And even if that is the case, though, do you still choose Keeper Initiates as your restricted card? I don't know. I feel like the main reason, though, for keeping keepers out of your deck at the minute is that the keeper rolls now suck. They suck ass. I guess the last thing I'll talk to is this isn't really huge element choice of your role. Some of you will probably be like, look, Dan, I can never leave water. Fight on. It's too good. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah, fight on's really good. But you know what isn't good? Having 2 water provinces in your row. That fucking sucks. What are you running? Revels is fine. And then Flooded Waste? Or Revels and Smuggler's Cove? They're just not, I don't really, the whole point of Seeker to me is creating this horrible row that your opponents have to get through and leveraging that strength that Crab have. And as well, most Crabs are now back on, most Crab decks will probably want to run Shiro Nishiyama over Kynden Hida. There's never been a better time to have really good, strong, nasty provinces in your Seeker. So I really think the Seeker Void is the one. You can always build. The great thing about Crab decks is you have access to so much ready. So if you miss Fight On, well, look, man, Does Not Fall isn't that much worse. It's still totally and utterly playable. Elegant Tessin and Common Cause are not roll locked. You can run things like Yakimo. You can run things like Steadfast Witch Hunter. You have many options to cheat bowing or avoid bowing or getting back up after bowing. So I don't think you need Fight On. Keeper of Water was kind of excusable because you're not tied into running water provinces on your row. It's still a pretty shit ring for your keepers. But if you're Fight On is just that good and I want to run a Keeper deck, well then all power to you. But I'm not going to be visiting Keeper until I see a reason to go back there. And I think that if we're going Seeker, then Seeker of Void is the one true path. You get a roll lock card that doesn't suck, and you get that nice row, and that does count for a lot. So anyway, a bit of a ramble, not really a deck tech. I guess what I would leave with you is try some new stuff out. Now's the fucking time. In general, I think Shiro Nishiyama and Seeker is going to trump Kynden Hida and Keeper. Depending on what you want your restricted list card to be, you may want to include certain Shihobu in your deck, you may not. We do have the option of multiple splashes as well. It's quite good. Lion, Phoenix, and Dragon are the ones that I am most interested in. Lion has just got so many options and so many good cards. You are really the sky is your limit there. Dragon has Lego and Tattooed Wanderer. That's always going to be good. Doing a full board covert to win the game is still very powerful. And if you are running someone like Shihobu, who's the linchpin of your deck, and you absolutely need to not have a Cloud the Mind on her, then Let Go is still great. There's still a load of nasty attachments. Let Go is never not going to be relevant. Phoenix Splash Actually, I'll close off this chat here. Phoenix Splash is great because you get Tadaka, who's really, really strong. Really, I mean, you've all played games versus Phoenix. Tadaka good, yo. Probably actually need to switch the numbers in this deck. I'll probably need to put that to 2 and that to 3 because you really don't want Tadaka Dishonored. Yeah, and we are, of course, the only other faction that can run him that isn't Phoenix. So, also an option for you. We've got options, basically. They're not the options you're used to. Crab deck design, as you know it, is now pretty much dead. Look at other characters. Your cost curve is probably going to increase a little bit unless you've gone with like a Lab Shihobu build that just wants to go wide. But you are, in general, your decks are going to have a bit more money to play around with. You'll notice that from playing Seeker. And although you've lost some powerful stuff, you know, the crab weighs nothing. You can never truly kill us. So have a mess about, see what you like. Understand that Crab has probably dropped from one of the best factions in the game to middle now, but every matchup is still winnable. There's no matchup where you're never going to have a matchup with Crab where it's going to be like Lion and Phoenix running Corey Mori on box before Worlds last year, where Lion literally just couldn't ever break a Phoenix box because they were allowed to run Corey Mori on it. Your matchup percentages are never going to be that bad. You've got a fair shot against everyone. Your natural predator Scorpion is gone or is diminished quite considerably. So experiment, try new things, play more aggressive decks, play more less aggressive decks. Figure it out. Well, one thing I will say that we can take away from this restricted list is we can fuck around with our honor a lot more. We can spend that honor as a resource and not be so completely and utterly beholden to it and worried about it. It's useless until you've run out, right? Anyway, I'll stop rambling now. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to eventually, at some point, probably in the next couple of days, just do a live streaming sesh, which I'll upload to YouTube afterwards, of just me playing some of these decks, talking about lines, talking about decisions that I've made in the deck building during the course of the game, why they're important. Hopefully you can find some value in this video. I mean, that's the Crab way, right? Look for value, gain value. Hopefully you guys can come to some kind of a place of greater understanding in your deck building. Thank you very much. See you next time.